Benvenuti e benvenute ad un nuovo episodio di Actually, il podcast di Will che parla del cambiamento che sembra arrivare piano piano e poi ci travolge tutto d'un tratto. Proseguiamo questa programmazione insolita estiva. Sentite anche un po' di rimbombo perché le location in cui registriamo non sono le solite, non sono gli studi di Milano, e questa programmazione estiva prosegue con un episodio un po' fuori dagli schemi ma in pieno stile Actually. È una conversazione che abbiamo registrato ormai qualche mese fa ma che non abbiamo ancora pubblicato e aspettavamo di pubblicarla in occasione dell'uscita di Warfare, Tempo di guerra, un nuovo film già definito la nuova frontiera del war movie che sarà nelle sale italiane dal 21 agosto, distribuito da Warner Pictures. Vi lascio quindi a Ricky e alla bella conversazione che si è fatto. A questo punto non mi resta che annunciare il gingolino e buon ascolto.
E quindi, big story di oggi, completamente fuori dagli schemi e dal normale del nostro podcast. Perché? Perché entriamo nel mondo del cinema, con un film, un titolo e due persone che questo film lo hanno girato e diretto. Uno di questi, lo conoscerete, è Alex Garland, adesso poi vi dirò qualcosina di più di lui, ma già il nome vi dirà qualcosa, e l'altro è Ray Mendoza. Il film che è nelle sale, uscirà nelle sale, in realtà fra pochi giorni in Italia, si chiama Warfare ed è una produzione di A24, distribuito in Italia da I Wonder, che ringraziamo per questa opportunità. Adesso ragazzi io passo all'inglese e entro direttamente nella nostra conversazione. Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, guys, I'll start with Alex. Just a couple of words on you, director of Warfare, your latest movie. You're a novelist, then turned filmmaker known for Ex Machina. Whoa, this was a powerful thing. Annihilation and Civil War, my 2024 favorite movie. And you're here with Ray Mendoza, who has another very peculiar history, as Ray is a former U.S. Navy SEAL with 16 years of service, a Silver Star from Iraq, and now a Hollywood experience. First, as a military advisor, we'll ask you about this profession, Ray, and then now with this experience as a director. Thank you so much once again, guys, to be here. I'll start with Alex. And I'll ask you, Alex, you have a unique perspective on the movie industry nowadays. You saw it. You started with The Beach by writing the thing, and now you arrived to Warfare. I'll start asking you, do you prefer the current state of the industry or the one that you got to know when you first started, something like more than 20 years ago?
That's such an interesting question. The thing about, so 2.5 decades ago, the industry was bigger, it had more money, more films were made, more people were going to the cinema. So you could say that was better. And it was great for that period, the kind of currency, the cultural currency that film had. But in those days, if you had a difficult idea or a sort of morally complex idea or something thoughtful or cerebral, you often had to smuggle it in to the film. You couldn't just do it. You had to hide it around other things. And you had to sometimes kind of trick studios into making films, making it seem like a slightly different kind of film than it really was. And these days, there's been two really big changes. One of them, weirdly, is television. The Sopranos changed the landscape in terms of adult drama within genre, I would say. And it demonstrated that audiences were more sophisticated than studios had believed them to be.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, yes, you are. I agree. And the other was, for me personally, was the arrival of A24 as a studio, which thought in the same way that creatives used to think. They were less like a studio and more like directors or writers in that respect.
Can you explain what makes A24 such a special film? Because here in Europe, we just see every now and then, some very cool hats. Everyone is looking for those hats, and amazing movies. But I'm not sure we're really grasping the uniqueness of this thing in modern movie making.
I should say there are some other studios who, like A24, are willing to make more difficult films.
Okay.
They're not the only one, but they are the one that proved the point and showed the way in some respects. So that's a very simple answer to that question. They are prepared to make movies that other people, the traditional legacy studios, are not prepared to make. So I had, not long ago, a guy who I've known for a very long time who runs one of the studios come up to me and say, I would never have made Civil War. I should have made Civil War, but I never would. And A24 not only did make it, they made it at a higher budget, taking a bigger risk with a smaller studio than any film they'd made previous up to that point. So that's the difference.
Well, and then thank you guys, you and A24, for giving birth to such a incredible movie like Civil War. Ray, I'll move to you, actually sticking a bit to this idea of change and how the industry changed. I mean, you've been working in the movie industry as an advisor and now as a director. How have you seen the industry changing, let's say, among those years? And I'll also ask you, because I mean, you started as a military advisor. I'll also ask you how the technology that changed a lot during the last, let's say, 10 years affected your work, especially as a military advisor.
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, when the war kicked off, there wasn't, I think, like one of the first war movies about GWAT, Global War on Terrorism, Iraq, Afghanistan, was, I want to say, Act of Valor, maybe, which I was a part of. And so in regards to the change or the evolution, that was like, there's this explosion, and I think in a lot of veterans, a lot of veterans wanting to tell their stories. I was lucky to have a good inside track when I started tech advising, but there's this huge explosion, I think, with books and veterans in the military space in general, whether that's them trying to be directors, writers, cameramen, you name it. Me as an advisor, I think that allowed me to be on more films, not just on military films, but just film had action.
Maybe I need to have another question. Like, can you briefly explain what is the role of a military advisor? Because I think it's not that common here in Europe to have such a figure on set.
Well, even that there's different kinds. So I think there's a technical advisor, right? So that's a technical advisor could be someone who's an expert in anything. It could be if it's a movie about surgeons or about astronauts or about race car drivers, right? You bring on a technical advisor. So I'm also a technical advisor because I'm talking about something very technical. It can also be a military advisor. That is even more specific. That means like the movie is probably something about some sort of military story. So therefore, or there's a military component to the movie there. Therefore, I am a military advisor and I'm advising only on the military stuff. But I can be brought in as a technical advisor. I could be talking about all aspects of it. Could be gunfighting, and it could be maybe my communications, because that was my specialty. So there's, it's loosely interchangeable, kind of. But for me, in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of military movies being done. Like I said, it was Act of Valor and then Lone Survivor. And I think maybe just the studios weren't doing them for some reason. But it was far and few between. So I had to figure out, what am I going to do in between? And so I was a PA, a production assistant. I worked in camera. I sat in editing rooms because I wanted to learn. And so I think which just enabled me to be a better technical advisor. I'm learning the language. I can start speaking the same language they're speaking. I think some tech advisors, military advisors, just stick to what they're good at, which is just advising on weapons and what the uniforms look like. And I feel where I broke out was I learned every facet of filmmaking, not just how to hold a gun. And I often was hired just for that. I would be brought on set and I'm just a check in the box. The director never spoke to me, didn't care what my opinion was. And I'm just an advisor. He could take my advice or not. And a lot of them did not. I was there because some producer said I had to be there, and they could really care less what I had to say or what I thought. The ones that do, I think a lot of the movies, those movies have separated themselves from the other movies.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it here.
Or being one of them. Yeah, exactly.
You can see it in Warfare.
Yeah, exactly. To your point. Yep. So when you surround yourself with experts, that's the sign of a good leader, right? Somebody who relies on the people that know what they're doing, and he just gives the direction of what he wants in his vision, and that's the sign of a intelligent leader. Those, if you have these people who are experts and you don't use them, then you're a fool.
I go back to the other director here, Alex. And I'll take just a bit of the question that I just asked to Ray on technology and AI. There's been a lot of talking about AI reshaping the industry, AI being, this huge risk. And then last night I was watching your movie, guys, and thought, who cares about AI? It's from my perspective, I never shot a movie, but it really had like the look and feel of a very artisanal movie. Like, I don't see. Did you use even a bit of AI in that? I'm just curious to see. And if not, again, I'll broaden the question. How do you see the role of AI evolving now in the industry, Alex?
Yeah, we didn't use AI, but I think personally, what I think is that AI is coming. So it's not really a question about whether you like it or not.
Yeah, for sure.
It's coming. And so you just have to figure out how you legislate it's coming, how you manage it's coming, not whether it's going to come or not. And I suspect that AI will in some ways be just like a tool, in the way that visual effects are a tool or special effects are a tool, or in a way cameras are a tool. So it will be a tool. It has one significant difference, which is it will 100% take jobs away. So less people will be earning a living. Yeah. On set, in pre-production, physical production, and post-production.
What about the writing? Like a movie like this, no? Okay, so it's based on a true story. What about, because I know in the US there's been a lot of talking about the writing part.
But you could use AI in this movie quite easily. So, for example, at some points we have a jet that does a course and
wow, it's so impressive. That's it. Yeah.
So we didn't have a real jet because we were a low budget film. I think Top Gun sometimes used real jets, but we couldn't, right? We just don't have the money. And so we use visual effects. And actually those visual effects shots are ultimately, if you add it all together, are in effect created by hundreds of people. And it's possible that in whatever it is, 5 or 10 years, a shot like that will be created by 2 people. So it's not so much about the creative role within film. It's more the societal role. It's like the Industrial Revolution. You just have less people earning money, paying tax, and being able to support their family.
Okay, thanks so much. Now let's move not that quickly actually, to the movie. We won't spoil anything under a very strong NDA, but I'm asking Ray, your perspective. The very end of the movie was there's a pretty touching section where your involvement and direct involvement comes out. You were part of the facts that are narrated in the movie. I guess it's the very first time in your life you've seen something you lived depicted directly in a movie. What was the feeling the first time you saw the movie, such a tragical movie of such a tragical moment of your life, and you watched it and said, what was the feeling?
Yeah, I sat in the editing room, so I watched it hundreds of times.
Okay, you were bored at some point.
Yeah, no, but the first time I actually saw it in a theater was with the guys that were there. A lot of my colleagues that were there that day also contributed to the film, as in like the recount or the retelling of like their perspectives and utilizing their memories of it. But so it was the first time showing them. And in a way, it was the first time me watching it on a big screen with the sound. And I was nervous. I was extremely, extremely nervous. We were both had some anxiety going into it because that was like the first test. Mm-hmm. It was the test of if we got it right, if we depicted everyone's testimonials correct. And so and then it's some of the comments were, it was great, accurate. We probably can't get it closer than that. That's about as close as we can get to what it was that day. And so, yeah, I think for me, I can't speak for Alex, but at that point, the weight starts to come off, right? There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of weight that we're carrying. And so at each, there's these kind of checkpoints of approval. That was the first one. And you just start to feel relief and the weight starts to come off. It's and that's an indicator that we did it right.
Alex, I just try to put this movie in perspective on your career. You started as a novelist, talking about backpackers in Thailand, and then you moved to different places like AI. And now, why a war movie at this point of your career and such a strong, powerful, let's say also bloody movie like this in 2025?
The honest answer to that probably in some ways goes back to my childhood, because one of my dad's closest friends was a foreign correspondent who was covering war in Southeast Asia at that time. And he used to come back, he would report on it, but he'd come back and he'd talk about it, and he'd bring back little sort of souvenirs, or he was just a big figure in my life. And I think having a closeness to a really very good war correspondent just taught me at an early age that there is a value in writing or filming or presenting narratives honestly about what war is actually like. And in some ways, then I became increasingly aware that I worked in an industry that was distorting some elements of war. And that sounds like a criticism. It's more complicated than that. I think there's room for lots of different sorts of films performing lots of different sorts of functions. But I was aware that in written form, there were actually many authentic first-person accounts of combat. Ray's referred to them. Soldiers, people in the Navy or the Air Force or whatever it was, would write books usually that gave an account of what their experiences were like. But there was very little in cinema that was an authentic voice, an unfiltered voice of a veteran. And there was even less that attempted to sort of forensically recreate combat. There may be almost nothing that attempts to do that. And I thought that it's good to be honest about war sometimes. Maybe not always, because nobody can bear it, but sometimes it's good to be honest. And what Ray did was present the opportunity to do that. I could not do that on my own because I don't have the first-hand experience that is necessary. I could only do it with Ray, actually, in this instance, partly because Ray is experienced as a soldier, but is experienced as in combat in the military, but also experienced on film sets. So the two just came together perfectly.
Well, it's a honest movie about war. This I can say for sure. Be prepared because it's really, really honest. I thank you, and I need to thank the co-directors of Warfare, Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.